In this video, we will show you how to replace your front axle assembly on the Subaru Impreza. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once we've done so, we'll continue on by removing all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now we can remove the axle nut. We'll use a 32mm for that. The next thing we'll do is use a hammer and punch, come right in the center of the axle. We need to break this free from the wheel bearing. Now that we have that broken free, the next thing we'll do is separate the ball joint from the lower control arm. You'll find that you have a locking cotter pin and a 19mm nut. Let's remove the pair. Just give that a quick inspection, make sure it is still reusable. Now we'll separate this area. Commonly, people might try to use a pickle fork and come right in between this area, but when you do so, you're going to cause damage to the ball joint. Instead, we'll just use a hammer, cause some vibration along this area of the control arm. Once you see a little bit of movement, you can pause. Now we can put some downward pressure on that control arm. For this, I'll just be using a hook up along the top, and I can use a pry bar to gently start pulling this down. Now our axle is in very poor condition. It might even fall apart. But what we're going to have to do is start pulling the knuckle away from the axle and draw the axle down and away. Now we can follow the axle all the way to where it connects to our transmission. We're going to have to separate the axle from the transmission. You can do that using a pry bar. Keep in mind there could be fluid in this area, so have a collection bucket handy. Now we can start sliding this out. There it is, friend. Now that we have the axle out of the vehicle, we have to pay attention along the transmission. We're looking at the seal. You want to make sure you clean and inspect this area. If it looks like the seal's damaged in any way, you have to replace it, and now's the perfect time to do it. All right, let's get ready to install our brand new front axle. Make sure you're putting this end into the transmission. The opposite end is much shorter, and that's the wheel bearing side. We'll carefully take this and slide it into place. Commonly for this, to get it locked in, you might have to give it a couple taps with a rubber mallet. Get this aligned. There we are. There we are. Now we can remove the axle nut, and we'll prepare to put this through the backside of the bearing. Now before we continue pushing this all the way through, we also have to align our lower ball joint with the hole in the control arm. So we'll be pulling this down, align the ball joint, and put the stud through the hole. Let's pull down on that control arm. Start on that ball joint nut. We'll snug this up and torque it to 30 foot-pounds. The next thing we'll have to do is install our cotter pin. That will go through one of the slots on the castle nut and through the hole in the stud of the ball joint. If for some reason none of the slots align with the hole in the ball joint stud, continue tightening the nut until the very next slot does. Slide that through. Pin it over. Now we can put on our axle nut. We'll start this on, bottom it out by hand. You never want to use an air tool on this because we don't want to over torque the wheel bearing. Now, as you noticed when I was trying to tighten this, this will spin. To help prevent that from spinning, you could carefully use a pry bar coming across this area, but be extremely careful not to damage the threads on any of your lug studs. Now we can torque that to 162 foot-pounds. Now once you have that torqued, it's important to pay attention to the small notch in the axle shaft itself. We have to use a hammer and punch and drive this nut down into that area, locking it in place so there's no way this can loosen up on you while you're driving down the road. All right, now we can prepare to install our wheel, but before we do, we need to double check every single thing. We want to make sure that we torqued it as necessary. To install the wheel, we'll just go ahead and start this on here. Start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We'll bottom these out and get the wheel back on the ground. Once we've done that, we'll continue on to torquing these to 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Now that we have the wheel safely on the ground, let's go ahead and torque these. Go around one more time. Torqued. Make your way safely down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.